Prologue. The anomaly. The air crackled with the stench of ozone and blood. Amid the ruins of a shattered city, the Chaos Brigade's rogue faction surged like a tide of shadows, their curses and spells tearing through the sky. Issei Hayudu, the Red Dragon Emperor, lunged forward, his crimson gauntlet blazing. Across the battlefield, Valley Lucifer's silver aura flared, divine dividing scales glinting like fractured ice as he carved through enemies with predatory precision. They were supposed to be allies today, temporary, begrudging allies. But old rivalries burned hotter than reason. Still playing hero, Issei? Valley taunted, his grin sharp as a blade. A blast of divine dividing energy vaporized a swarm of rogue devils. "You're slowing me down," says the guy who can't stop staring at my back. Issei shot back, boosted gear roaring as he shattered a hex shield. The air between them hummed, charged with decades of dragon-fueled animosity. It happened in a breath. A warlord of the faction, desperate and cornered, unleashed a forbidden spell. A black hole sphere that warped gravity itself. Issei and Valley moved as one, their sacred gears pulsing. Boost, divide, crimson met silver. The collision was cataclysmic. Light fractured. Reality screamed. A jagged tear split the sky, a maw of swirling void that devoured sound and light. At its epicenter, the dragon souls, Ddraig's fiery wrath, Albion's glacial pride, were ripped from their gears and flung into the rift's chaos. Issei's scream echoed as the vortex consumed him. Valley, caught at the edge, was hurled backward by a surge of Albion's instinctive protection. A parting gift from a rival turned unwitting savior. When the dust settled, the rift sealed, leaving only silence. Vallis staggered to his feet, his divine dividing dormant, silent. His gaze locked on Issei's limp form. The boy's right arm bore a gauntlet no longer crimson, but a helix of scarlet and mercury, its glow throbbing like a hybrid heartbeat. "Impossible," Valley whispered. Albion's voice, usually a cold echo in his mind, was gone. Yet in the stillness, he felt it, a distant, dissonant hum, as though the Welsh dragon's roar now carried the White's frost. Issei stirred, his eyes flickering open. One pupil burned dragon red. The other shimmered, pale as starlight. "Valley?" he rasped, staring at his transformed gear. The voices in his head were a cacophony. Ddraig's growls, Albion's hisses, melding into something new, something alarming. The silver-haired heir of Lucifer tensed. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. "This changes nothing, Hayudu," he spat, but the edge in his voice wavered. With a snap of his wings, he vanished into the horizon, leaving Issei alone in the crater. Far above, storm clouds gathered, a mirror to the tempest now brewing in Issei's soul. The gauntlet's dual hues pulsed, a symbol of unity born from chaos. And somewhere, in the depths of the dimensional sea, a pair of ancient eyes snapped open. The balance breaker had just begun. Author's note: this prologue sets the stage for a story exploring duality, identity, and the consequences of merged legacies. How will Issei reconcile two warring dragons within him? What does Albion's silence mean for Valley? And what forces might seek to exploit this new anomaly? The game has changed. Recap: during a joint battle against the Chaos Brigade, Issei Hayudu and Valley Lucifer's clashing sacred gears, boosted gear and divine dividing, created a dimensional rift. The souls of their dragon patrons, Ddraig and Albion, merged into Issei's body, leaving him with a hybrid sacred gear and Valley mysteriously unscathed but stripped of Albion's voice. Issei now bears a crimson and silver gauntlet and the warring consciousnesses of two ancient rivals in his mind. Issei clenched his fist, staring at the crimson-silver gauntlet that now defined his existence. The conflicting energies inside him weren't in balance. They were at war. Albion's icy presence clashed against Ddraig's fire, each fighting for control rather than working together. "All right, let's try. Just a little boost," he murmured. The moment his energy flared, pain lanced through his arm. The gym floor beneath him cracked as an uncontrolled surge of power lashed out. Silver flames clashed against red, and in an instant, a shockwave ripped through the room. The walls warped, the ceiling trembled, and a support beam collapsed behind him. "Damn it! Stop! Stop!" he gasped, falling to his knees. The laughter of dragons filled his mind. Asterisk, asterisk, weakling, Ddraig's roar boomed. You're holding back. Burn through your limits. Foolish red lizard, Albion's voice cut in coldly. If he pushes further without control, he will destroy himself first. Issei pressed his palms to his temples. The argument wasn't just noise. It was ripping through him, threatening to tear him apart. He exhaled shakily. This wasn't power he could master overnight. The infirmary ceiling swam in and out of focus. Issei's skull throbbed. A drumbeat synced to the arguing voices in his head. Pathetic whelp. Let me burn that frostbitten worm out of your bones. Arrogant lizard. His body is mine to refine. Shut up, Issei groaned, pressing his palms against his temples. The left side of his vision flickered red, the right silver. He'd been here for 3 days. 3 days of Rias' worried glances, Asia's tearful healing sessions, and Kiba's sword resting just outside the door. In case the white dragon's influence takes hold, he'd said, like I'm a bomb. Akino brought him lunch, spicy curry, his favorite, but even her smile was strained. President says you can return to class tomorrow. Slowly, slowly. As if his body wasn't humming with power that made boosted gear's old energy feel like a campfire compared to a supernova. He discovered it by accident that night, practicing in the abandoned gym. Issei stared at his transformed gauntlet. The crimson scales now swirled with metallic silver veins. All right, let's try a little boost. Fool. You must divide first to stabilize. Albion's icy voice cut through. Ignore the coward. Crush the limiter, Ddraig roared. I said shut up. Issei slammed his fist into the air. The gear activated. Both activated. Crimson light exploded from his right arm, then split. Tendrils of silver energy lashing out like whips. Power surged through him, euphoric and terrifying. The gym's reinforced walls vaporized in a spiral of fire and glinting ice shards. Stop! Issei screamed, but the dragon's laughter/wrath drowned his voice. More. Weakling. He woke to the sound of sirens. Kuo Academy's eastern wing was gone. Not damaged, gone. A perfect hemisphere of scorched earth and glass stone marked where the gym once stood. Students huddled on the lawn, some bleeding, all staring at him with wide eyes. Rias stood in front of him, her usual composure shattered. Issei, what happened? I didn't mean to. His gauntlet flickered. Silver threads crawling up his neck. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A first year fainted. They fear us, Albion hissed, triumphant. As they should. Ddraig agreed. A rare moment of unity. Kaneko materialized beside Rias, her petite frame coiled to strike. President. His aura. It's both. And neither. Issei stumbled back, the world tilting. His head split, literally. A jagged line of light cracked across his forehead, red and silver bleeding into his veins. Stay back, he choked. I can't control it. The gear pulsed again. This time, it wasn't just destruction. The ground divided beneath Kaneko's feet even as flames boosted toward the astronomy tower. Ria's scream pierced the chaos as she erected a hasty barrier. Issei, suppress it, she shouted, her magic straining against the dual assault. How? The dragon's voices overlapped, a storm of pride and loathing. Issei clawed at his hair, falling to his knees. Something warm trickled from his nose, blood, gold and cobalt, swirling like his corrupted sacred gear. A cold hand gripped his wrist. Graphia Lucifuge, the queen of the underworld, materialized in a shower of crimson petals. Her expression was unreadable, but her grip was iron. Enough, child. Unless you wish to die here. Her other hand pressed against his chest. Ice-cold magic flooded his veins, a temporary seal. The gauntlet dimmed. The High King requests your presence, she said, glancing at the smoldering ruins. Immediately, as Graphia teleported them away, Issei caught a glimpse of Valley watching from the school gates. The half-blood Lucifer's eyes glowed an unsettling blue, and for once, he wasn't smiling. Graphia drags Issei to the underworld, where Surzex reveals the merged dragons have made him a target, not just of the Cow's Brigade, but of both heaven and hell, who fear a sacred gear that defies all balance. Meanwhile, Valley begins hunting the only cure, a mythical artifact that can sever soul bonds, even if it kills Issei in the process. Recap. After losing control of his merged sacred gear, now capable of simultaneous boost and divide, Issei accidentally destroyed part of Kuo Academy. Grafia intervened, sealing his power temporarily, and brought him to Surzex in the underworld. There, he learned heaven and hell view him as a threat. Meanwhile, Valley, now stripped of Albion's voice, began hunting a mythical artifact to sever the dragon's bond, even if it kills Issei. Chapter 2. Vala's Vendetta. Valley found him in the marketplace of Underworld's capital. Issei had been shuffling through the crowd under Grafia's watch, cloaked in a suppression charm, when the air turned arctic. Silver wings blotted out the artificial sky. Hayudu. Vala's roar cracked the cobblestones. His divine dividing armor flickered, unstable and laced with jagged cracks. Albion's absence had left it feral. You think you can steal what's mine? Issei barely raised his hybrid gauntlet in time. Vala's fist, charged with a half-formed divide, slammed into his guard. The collision shattered storefronts and sent onlookers fleeing. Kill him, Ddraig snarled. No, crush his pride first. Albion countered. I didn't steal anything. Issei spat, his gauntlet flaring crimson-silver. A wild boost divide surge erupted, tearing up the street in a helix of fire and ice. Vala dodged, but his left wing disintegrated at the tips. Liar, you've infected my gear, tainted it. His remaining wing lashed forward, firing feathers like blades. Albion was mine to conquer. Issei divide boosted into the air, the conflicting commands in his head sparking a nosebleed. You think I want this? They won't shut up. He fired a haphazard blast. It missed Valley, vaporizing a watchtower instead. The battle spiraled. Vala's attacks grew reckless, his divide field sputtering like a dying engine. Issei's retaliations were raw, unfocused. Every boost amplified a divide. Every divide backlashed into a boost. The city square became a cratered wasteland. Rias arrived in a burst of demonic teleportation, her hair singed and eyes blazing. Stop this. Her power of destruction swirled between her hands, aimed at Valley. Stand down, Lucifer. Stay out of this, Rias. Issei shouted. His gauntlet pulsed erratically, the red and silver light bleeding into his eyes. I can't hold it. Vala seized the opening. A divide-charged kick sent Issei crashing through a marble monument. You don't deserve their power, he hissed, looming over Issei's crumpled form. I'll carve that gear from your corpse and purge Albion myself. Issei's gauntlet crackled. The voices in his head overlapped, screaming. Boost, divide, kill him. A shockwave of opposing energies erupted. Vala skidded back, blood streaking from his nostrils. Issei staggered upright, his body trembling as fissures of light split his skin. Rias lunged toward him. Issei, let me help. No. He recoiled, a divide pulse rippling out on instinct. Rias gasped as her own demonic energy was halved, the backlash knocking her into Kiba's arms. Issei froze. I didn't mean to. Vala laughed, a broken sound. Look at you. A dragon puppet. He spat blood, his armor dissolving. This isn't over. Next time, I'll bring the blade that severs souls. Pray it doesn't end yours. He vanished in a swirl of tattered wings. Issei collapsed. The last thing he saw was Rias reaching for him, and the terror in her eyes as his gauntlet flickered toward her. Author's notes. Vala's rage. His identity was built on surpassing Albion. Losing the dragon without claiming victory has left him unmoored. His vendetta isn't just about power, it's existential. Issei's fear, pushing Rias away, mirrors his growing self-loathing. The dragon's merged influence is eroding his confidence, making him question if he's still himself. Foreshadowing, Vala's soul-severing blade ties to the mythical artifact he's hunting, a weapon that could cure Issei by killing both dragons and him. Meanwhile, the public battle will escalate tensions with Heaven's forces, who now see Issei as a walking apocalypse. Surzex reveals the artifact Vala seeks is one of God's lost creations, a dagger called Zeruel, capable of slaying even Ophis Infinity. To protect Issei, Rias faction allies with unexpected rivals. But Valley isn't the only hunter. Recap. Following Vala's public assault on Issei in the underworld, their battle ended in a stalemate. with Valley vowing to retrieve a soul-severing artifact to destroy the merged dragons, even if it kills Issei. Terrified of harming Rias, Issei pushed her away, deepening his isolation. Now, the Underworld's leaders gather to decide his fate. Chapter 3. The Council's Judgment. The Chamber of the High Council was a mausoleum of whispers. Issei stood chained at its center, his hybrid gauntlet clamped in cursed steel. Above him, the arched ceiling shimmered with constellations of trapped souls, a reminder of the Underworld's merciless order. Rias stood rigid at his side, her jaw set. Across the room, Azazel leaned against a pillar, feigning nonchalance, but his lone eye tracked every twitch of the counselor's hands. "Let the record show," intoned Counselor Malphas, a skeletal devil with ink-stained talons, that the hybrid sacred gear designated Juggernaut Drive. Eclipse has breached Category A threat parameters 6 times in 10 days. His bone staff struck the floor, summoning holograms of Kuoa's ruins in the shattered underworld marketplace. "This creature cannot be controlled." "Creature?" Rias stepped forward, her voice trembling with fury. "He is Issei Hayudu, a servant of House Gremory and—" "A liability," interrupted Lady Nabairos, her face hidden beneath a veil of living smoke, one that has drawn heaven's gaze. "Michael's seraphs now patrol our borders, demanding his surrender. Shall we risk war for this boy?" Issei's chains clinked as he shuddered. Inside his skull, the dragon's war raged. "Let me burn this council to ash." Ddraig roared. "Fool! They are right to fear us," Albion muttered, but his tone lacked its usual venom. Azazel pushed off the pillar. "You're missing the point," he drawled, tossing a data crystal onto the council table. It projected schematics of the dimensional rift from Issei and Vala's clash. That incident wasn't an accident. The Chaos Brigade's warlord used hegemony magic to amplify their collision. This was a targeted play to create Eclipse. "By whom?" snapped Malphas. "Who benefits from a weapon that can destabilize all 3 factions?" Azazel countered. "Ophis is gone. Trihexa sleeps. But something new is stirring. Something that wants Eclipse unleashed." The chamber erupted in shouts. "Enough!" Surzek's voice silenced the room. The Crimson Satan descended from his obsidian throne, his usual playful demeanor replaced by glacial intensity. "Issei Hayudu is not a weapon. He is a child bearing the sins of dragons older than this council." He paused, his gaze lingering on Issei. "But if we execute him, we surrender to fear. And that is how wars are lost." Malphas bristled. "You would gamble our realm's safety on sentiment?" "No," Surzek's aura flared, dissolving Issei's chains in a burst of harmless crimson sparks. "I gamble on potential. The same potential that allowed a human boy to master a Longinus. The same potential that united sworn enemies against a greater threat." His eyes hardened. "If Issei falls, we lose more than a soldier. We lose the path." The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. "The path to what?" Albion whispered, not to Ddraig, but to Issei. Before he could respond, pain lanced through his skull. A new voice, thin and echoing, slithered into the chaos. "They see you." Issei gagged, gold cobalt blood dripping from his nose. The gauntlet flickered, its crimson-silver light staining the chamber. "Issei?" Rias reached for him. "Don't touch me," he screamed. But the words weren't his. Silver tendrils lashed from the gauntlet, divide energy ripping through the floor. Counselors scattered as the ground beneath Rias halved her demonic power. Surzek moved faster. A sphere of destruction swallowed the tendrils. "Graphia!" Now, the chamber doors burst open. Graphia's ice magic encased Issei's arm, but the gauntlet thrashed like a live thing. "Pathetic," Ddraig sneered. "You disgrace my power." "Silence, Red." Albion's voice cut sharper than usual. "Can you not see? His body rejects us because we reject him." A beat of stunned silence from both dragons. Issei blinked, momentarily lucid. "Albion? I understand now," the white dragon murmured, his voice frayed. "This pain, this regret, it mirrors my own. After I lost to Ddraig, the admission hung like a detonation." "Enough theatrics." Malphas raised his staff. "Vote. Now." As the counselors chanted their verdicts, Issei met Albion's consciousness, not as a conqueror, but a mirror. "You fear becoming what I was," Albion said quietly. a shadow of hatred. But you still cling to them. Memories flashed. Ria's smile, Asia's tears, Kaneko stealing his pudding. Anchors, Albion mused. How curious. Guilty, Malphas declared. The council roared. No. Rias lunged, but Grafia held her back. Surzex raised a hand. As High King, I invoke Sovereign's mercy. The accused enters my custody until… Mercy? Nibiru's veil dissolved, revealing a face seared by holy light. You overstep, Lucifer. The chamber shook, and in the chaos Albion whispered, let me help. Author's notes. Albion's shift. His sympathy stems from recognizing Issei's internal battle as a reflection of his own ancient rivalry. Unlike Ddraig, Albion lost the war that defined him, a wound that never healed. Issei's struggle to retain his humanity mirrors Albion's regret, sparking reluctant empathy. Political fractures. The council's divide isn't just about Issei. It's a proxy war between old-world devils, Malphas, Nibiru's, and Surzek's progressive faction. Michael's pressure from heaven escalates the stakes, hinting at a larger conspiracy. Surzek's path. His cryptic warning ties into the original DxD lore's themes of breaking cyclical hatred. By betting on Issei, he's challenging the supernatural world's rigid hierarchies, a dangerous game. Foreshadowing, the thin voice Issei heard, they see you, is a breadcrumb toward the Chaos Brigade's true puppet master, who manipulated Issei and Vala's clash. As Surzek stalls the council, Michael offers a clandestine deal. Heaven will spare Issei if he undergoes a purification ritual, one that could erase both dragons. Meanwhile, Albion's budding alliance with Issei infuriates Ddraig, fracturing the Sacred Gear's power further. Recap. After narrowly avoiding execution by the Underworld's High Council, Issei remains in Surzek's custody. Albion's unexpected empathy has created a fragile truce between the dragons in his mind, but Draig's resentment grows. Meanwhile, Surzek's defiance of the Council and Heaven's looming purification ritual push Issei toward a breaking point. Chapter 4. The Visions. The dreams began the night Albion whispered, let me help. Issei stood on a battlefield older than civilization. Two dragons, one crimson, one silver, circled each other in a sky choked with ash. Traitor! Draig's voice shook the earth, his jaws dripping molten fire. You sided with them. You blinded yourself to the truth. Albion roared back, his wings shearing through mountains. They manipulated us. Can you not see? The vision fractured. Now, Issei saw a cloaked figure standing between the dragons, hands raised. A mask of void-black stone hid their face. The red seeks dominion. The figure hissed to Albion. The white covets your throne, it whispered to Ddraig. The dragons lunged. Issei woke screaming, his gauntlets searing as though dipped in magma. The safe house, a gothic manor on the edge of the underworld, was silent. Moonlight bled through stained glass, painting Ria's sleeping form blue as she slumped in an armchair beside his bed. She stayed. The realization ached more than the burn. That was no dream, Albion said, his voice unsteady. Lies, Ddraig snarled. The white betrayed me. Always. And who showed you proof of that betrayal? Albion shot back. A pause. Think, old rival. Who first spoke of my treason? Silence. Issei clutched his head. You mean, someone tricked you into fighting? Impossible. Draig's growl faltered. We chose our war. Did we? Albion's tone turned hollow. I remember only rage. But now, seeing your memories, Hayudu, I feel gaps. Shadows where reason should be. A knock shattered the moment. Awake, I see, drawled a woman's voice. The door creaked open, revealing a stranger cloaked in patchwork robes stitched with celestial runes. Her eyes, one gold, one silver, glowed in the dark. Good. Visions take a toll on the body. Rias jolted upright, power swirling in her palms. Who are you? How did you bypass Surzek's wards? The woman smirked. Wards are like lovers, Lady Gremory, easy to unravel if you know their secrets. She tossed a token onto the bed, a twisted sigil of the Grigori. Azazel sends his regards. He calls me Lysandra. As for what I am? Her gaze locked on Issei's gauntlet. Let's say I'm a scholar of souls. She reeks of forbidden magic, Albion warned. Kill her, Ddraig demanded. Lysandra tilted her head, as though hearing them. Still squabbling, I see. How nostalgic. She flicked her wrist. The air hummed, and Issei's gauntlet flared. Not red or silver, but violet. The room dissolved. Ddraig, roaring as a masked figure, implants a memory falsehood into his soul. Albion, tricked into raising a village he swore to protect. A war that should have ended in truce, twisted into an eternal feud. Issei gasped, back in his body. You can see their memories? Not just see. Lyssandra's smile turned sharp. I can weave. Your dragon souls are two halves of a sundered whole. Forge them anew, and the Eclipse Gear's instability vanishes. Rias stepped between them. At what cost? Cost. Lysandra chuckled. So suspicious. Let's call it a trade. I merge the dragons. Issei lends me his power for one favor. Her mismatched eyes gleamed. After all, the one who manipulated Ddraig and Albion still exists. And you'll need me to find them. Do not trust her, Albion hissed. But if she speaks truth, Ddraig began. No deals. Rias' voice cracked like a whip. Leave. Now. Lysandra sighed. As you wish. But know this, Red Dragon Emperor. She tossed him a crystal vial filled with swirling smoke. The visions will worsen. Drink this to mute them. For a time, she vanished in a ripple of distorted space. Rias turned, her composure crumbling. Issei, promise me you won't. He was already staring at the vial. Author's notes. The third party, the masked figure in the vision's ties, back to the thin voice Issei heard earlier, confirming an ancient entity manipulated the dragon's rivalry. This entity's legacy likely birthed the Chaos Brigade's recent schemes. Lyssandra's agenda. Her ability to interact with sacred gear souls suggests a connection to the original Sekiryuti and Hakuryaku creators. Her price is deliberately vague. She may want Issei's merged power to resurrect something or someone lost to history. Ddraig's crisis. Witnessing the fabricated memories forces Ddraig to confront the possibility his entire identity, his hatred, his purpose, was a lie. This destabilizes his spirit, making Issei's control even more precarious. Rias' fear. Her insistence on refusing Lyssandra's help isn't just about caution. It mirrors her terror of losing Issei to a force she can't protect him from. Issei uses Lyssandra's vial, muting the dragon's voices but triggering a catastrophic, silent backlash that paralyzes Kuo. With Rias' peerage collapsing under the strain, Issei must choose. Trust Lyssandra's dangerous offer, or let the dragon's war consume his mind. Meanwhile, Valley uncovers the artifact, Zirul, and learns it requires a living sacrifice to activate. Recap. After discovering that Ddraig and Albion's ancient rivalry was orchestrated by a mysterious third party, Issei faced a critical choice. Trust Lyssandra's dangerous offer to merge the dragon's souls or risk losing himself to their chaos. When he used her vial to mute their voices, it triggered a silent backlash that paralyzed Kuo Academy. Now, with time running out, Issei agrees to a ritual in the sacred dragon's tomb, a place where dragon souls are judged, to confront the truth of his gear's legacy. Chapter 5. The Dragon's Trial. The dragon's tomb wasn't a tomb at all. It was a void, an endless expanse of floating stone pillars, each carved with draconic runes that pulsed like heartbeats. Issei stood at the center, the air thick with the scent of petrified ash and iron. Rias, Surzex, and Graphia watched from a distant platform, their figures blurred as though seen through warped glass. Lysandra had insisted they observe. The tomb judges all, she'd said. Even witnesses. This is a farce, Ddraig growled, his voice weaker now, frayed by the ritual's binding chains. No tomb can contain me. Arrogant to the end, Albion muttered, but his usual bite was dulled. The white dragon's presence flickered, dimmer since the visions. Lyssandra's voice echoed through the void. Begin. The pillars ignited. Crimson and silver flames roared upward, twisting into two colossal dragons, manifestations of Ddraig and Albion's purest selves, untainted by time or regret. You. The spectral Ddraig's eyes blazed. You carry my power, yet let the white's weakness fester. Prove your worth, vessel. The Albion manifestation coiled, icy disdain in its gaze. You are a canvas of chaos, unworthy of legacy. Erase yourself. Issei's gauntlet trembled. I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to understand. Understanding is for the victor, roared Ddraig's shade. A torrent of fire engulfed Issei. He didn't block it. The flames seared his skin, but Issei stood firm, memories flashing. Training with Kiba, Asia's healing touch, Rias' laughter. Anchors, Albion had called them. Pathetic, hissed Albion's shade. Silver talons slashed, carving gashes across Issei's chest. Blood, gold, and cobalt pooled at his feet. I know. You were lied to, Issei choked, collapsing to one knee. Both of you. Someone made you enemies. Don't you want justice? The dragons froze. Justice? Ddraig's flame dimmed. Justice died with my pride. There is no justice, Albion's shade hissed. Only survival. Issei forced himself upright. Then why am I here? Why let me see the truth? Silence. Because we cannot change, Albion's manifestation whispered. But you are human. Flawed. Malleable. The real Albion, the fractured soul in Issei's mind, suddenly surged forward. Enough. His voice cut through the void. I will not let history repeat. Before Issei could react, the white dragon's spirit tore free, a shimmering wraith of silver light. What are you doing? Ddraig roared. Albion faced his spectral counterpart. You are me, and I am tired. He turned to Issei. The tomb demands sacrifice. Let it be mine. No. Issei reached for him, but Albion's spirit dissolved into 1,000 shards, piercing the manifestation's core. The spectral Albion screamed, a sound of sorrow, not pain, before shattering. The silver flames died, absorbed into Ddraig's crimson fire. Fool! Ddraig's manifestation shuddered, its form swelling with unstable power. You think this ends anything? The real Ddraig's voice, now clearer, filled Issei's mind. No, but it begins something. The remaining flames condensed, swirling around Issei. The pain faded. His gauntlet shifted. Crimson scales fused with silver, jagged and raw, as though forged in a supernova. Eclipse scale mail, Albion's fading voice whispered. Our final gift. Armor encased Issei, a chaotic lattice of red and silver, thrumming with unstable energy. The tomb trembled. Surzek's voice broke through. Issei, the rituals collapsing. But Issei stared at Ddraig's manifestation, now kneeling. Why? He asked. The spectral dragon's eyes softened. Because he remembered what I forgot. Even dragons can hope. The void shattered. Issei woke in the real world, the eclipse armor dissolving into motes of light. Rias cradled his head, tears streaking her face. You idiot, she whispered. You lived. Ddraig's voice, quieter but steadier, hummed in his mind. The whites' sacrifice stabilized us. For now, but Albion was silent. Author notes, Albion's sacrifice. By sacrificing a fragment of his soul, Albion forced a ceasefire in the Dragon's War, not just for Issei's sake, but to confront his own regrets. His absence leaves a void that even Ddraig feels, shifting their dynamic from hatred to uneasy alliance. Eclipse scale mail. This unstable armor symbolizes the fragile truce between the dragons. Its raw power comes at a cost. Each use risks reigniting their conflict. Think of it as a berserker mode that Issei can't fully control yet. The tomb's role. The ritual wasn't just about power. It forced Issei to confront the dragon's humanity. Their manifestations mirrored his own fears of inadequacy, making his victory a psychological breakthrough. Lyssandra's silence. Notice she didn't interfere? Her goal wasn't to help Issei. It was to observe the Eclipse Gear's potential. Her true agenda is still lurking. With Albion's voice silenced, Ddraig begrudgingly becomes Issei's guide. But the Eclipse armor's first test goes horribly wrong, destroying a sacred devil relic. Meanwhile, Vala secures the Iziruel artifact, only to learn it requires a dragon's soul to activate, and he's fresh out of allies to sacrifice. Recap. After Albion sacrificed a fragment of his soul to stabilize Ddraig, Issei unlocked the unstable Eclipse scale mail, a chaotic armor merging both dragons' powers. Meanwhile, Vala secured the soul-severing artifact, Iziruel, only to learn it requires a dragon's soul to activate. With Albion's voice silent and tensions rising, both Issei and Vala remain pawns in a game orchestrated by forces older than their feud. You think you deserve their power? Vala snarled, his voice raw with fury. His divine dividing armor pulsed, unstable and cracking at the seams. Albion's absence had left it feral. "You stole him from me." Issei barely raised his hybrid gauntlet in time. Vala's fist, charged with a divide field, slammed into his guard. The impact shattered the ground beneath them, sending shockwaves through the ruins of the underworld's market square. "I didn't steal anything." Issei spat back. His gauntlet flickered, unstable, one moment radiating Ddraig's fiery power, the next exuding Albion's frost. "I never wanted this." Vala's eye twitched, but his fury didn't waver. "Albion was mine to surpass. My rival. My proof that he hesitated. Only for a fraction of a second, but Issei saw it, the fracture in Vala's conviction. The way his fists clenched tighter, not just in rage, but grief. And that's when he knew. "You don't hate me," Issei exhaled. "You hate that he's gone." Vala's fists trembled. "Shut up. He chose this," Issei continued, stepping forward. "Not me. Not you. He knew something we didn't. Something about this power, about Erebus. And instead of honoring that, you're throwing a tantrum like a child." Vala's entire body shook. "I should kill you. Then do it." Issei spread his arms. "Or help me end Erebus." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken emotions. Then, with a furious growl, Valley turned away. "TCH fine. But when this is over, Hayadu, we settle this properly." Issei grinned weakly. "Wouldn't have it any other way." Valley found him at the ruins of Ddraig's first grave. The site was a barren crater in the Welsh Highlands, where the red dragon skeleton had once been entombed. Issei stood at its edge, the eclipse armor's jagged plates flickering on his body like a dying star. He'd come to mourn Albion. Instead, he found vengeance. "Hayudu." Vala's divide-enhanced fist slammed into Issei's back before he could turn. The impact cratered the earth, sending shockwaves through the ancient battlefield. "Finish him," Ddraig urged, but his voice lacked conviction. Issei's eclipse gauntlet flared, deflecting Vala's next strike. "I don't want to fight you, liar." Vala's armor pulsed with unstable light, cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. Zirul's blade, a jagged shard of obsidian etched with God's forgotten runes, glowed in his grip. "You stole Albion. Now I'll take both dragons." The clash that followed was brutal, unrefined. Valley fought with reckless fury, Zirul's edge carving gouges into the eclipse armor. Issei's counterattacks were defensive, hesitant, until a backhanded divide slash sent him skidding through stone. "Fight back, fool!" Ddraig roared. Issei's vision swam. Gold cobalt blood dripped from his nose. "I'm trying." Valley loomed over him, Zirul raised. "You don't deserve their power, nor do you." The voice wasn't Ddraig's, it was Albion's. A faint silver glow seeped from Issei's gauntlet, coalescing into a spectral echo of the white dragon. Valley froze, Zirul trembling in his grip. "Albion, you were never meant to be my jailer, Vala Lucifer," the apparition whispered. "Nor I your chains. We were both deceived." Vala's mask of fury cracked. "By who?" "By me." Lysandra materialized atop a shattered pillar, her patchwork robes fluttering in the charged air. Her mismatched eyes glinted with perverse delight. "Well, not me personally, but my employer? Oh, he's been pulling your strings since the dragon's first breath." Issei staggered upright. "The masked figure from the visions. Erebus," Lysandra purred. "Primordial embodiment of strife. He's rather miffed you two stopped killing each other." She tossed a decaying scroll into the crater. It depicted the same void-masked figure from Issei's dreams, whispering to Ddraig and Albion. "His hobby is twisting noble legacies into tragedies. The dragon feud? Just his magnum opus." Vala's blade lowered an inch. "Why reveal this now?" "Because Erebus is bored." Lysandra hopped down, her tone chillingly casual. "He's decided to accelerate things. Trihexa's seal? It's weakening. Ophis remnants? He's corralling them. And you," she pointed to Issei's eclipse gear, "are his favorite loose end." "Enough." Ddraig snarled. "Where is he?" Lysandra smirked. "The better question. Are you ready to die fighting him?" She nodded to Zirul. "That blade can sever primordial bonds, but it needs a dragon soul to ignite. Permanently." Vala stared at the weapon, then at Albion's fading echo. For the first time, Issei saw doubt in his eyes. "You knew," Valley muttered to Albion's spirit. "That's why you let yourself be absorbed." "A soul for a soul," Albion replied. "But not yours." The white dragon's apparition dissolved, its final embers merging with Zirul's blade. The runes flared, then dimmed. "A down payment," Lysandra said. "The rest of Albion's soul is in Issei. Use it all, and Zirul burns bright enough to wound Erebus." "But," she grinned at Valley, "poetic, isn't it? To end the dragon's war by sacrificing the very power you craved." Silence hung thick. Issei's eclipse armor dissolved, leaving him vulnerable. "Valley, if we fight, Erebus wins." The half-devil's gaze flickered between Zirul and Issei. Seconds ticked by. Then, with a snarl, Valley rammed the blade into the earth. "I'm not your ally, Hayudu," he spat, "but I'll carve through Erebus to get my revenge. Stay in my way, and I'll kill you after." Issei grinned weakly. "Same here." Lysandra clapped. "Touching. Now, let's discuss how to bait a primordial being." Author notes: Vala's turning point. His hesitation to use Zirul shows growth. He's no longer just a wrathful heir, but a warrior confronting his role as a pawn. Albion's plea forced him to see beyond his vendetta. Erebus introduction. As a primordial force, Erebus isn't a typical villain. He's entropy incarnate, thriving on chaos. This elevates the conflict from personal rivalries to a cosmic scale. Lysandra's game. Her casual betrayal of Erebus hints at her own agenda. Is she seeking redemption, power, or something else? Her alliance with the duo is as unstable as Issei's armor. Albion's legacy. By leaving a fragment in Zirul, Albion gifted Valley a choice, mirroring his own sacrifice. This keeps his presence alive in the narrative, even as a whisper. The trio's plan to lure Erebus goes awry, trapping them in a pocket dimension where time fractures. Issei glimpses a future where Vala kills him, while Vala sees a world destroyed by the Eclipse Gear's corruption. Meanwhile, Rias discovers Lysandra's hidden ties to Michael's archangels, and a holy crusade poised to strike. Recap. After forming a fragile alliance to confront Erebus, the primordial being who manipulated Ddraig and Albion's feud, Issei and Valley learned his goal is to reignite their rivalry to fuel his resurrection. Lysandra, the enigmatic scholar, revealed Erebus' plans to exploit the Eclipse Gear's instability to breach reality. With Albion's soul fragment powering Vala's artifact, Zirul, the two dragons' heirs prepare for a battle that could cost them everything. Chapter 7. The Shadow of Erebus. The air tasted of rust and ash. Erebus's battleground was a grotesque tapestry of the Dragon's War, a bleeding amalgam of every clash between Ddraig and Albion. Charred forests regrew only to burn again. Mountains crumbled and reforged themselves mid-collapse. The sky wept blood-tinged rain. Issei's merged peerage, Rias' team and Vala's rogue faction, stood at the edge of the chaos. Biko's golden staff tapped nervously against a petrified tree. "So, we're all gonna die here, right?" "Optimist," Kuroka purred, though her tail bristled. Rias ignored them, her gaze locked on Valley. "If you betray us, you'll kill me?" Vala smirked, Zirul glowing faintly at his hip. "Focus, princess. Your boyfriend's the one leaking chaos." He wasn't wrong. Issei's eclipse armor flickered uncontrollably, its jagged plates fracturing the ground beneath him. Ddraig's voice, strained but clear, echoed in his mind. "Erebus is close. I can smell him." Akino's lightning crackled. Incoming, the battlefield shuddered. From the bloodied soil rose spectral dragons, shadowy mimics of Ddraig and Albion, their eyes voids of screaming faces. "What the hell are those?" Kiba drew his sword, holy and demonic energies clashing along its edge. "Echoes," Lysandra said, materializing atop a crumbling pillar. Erebus resurrected every blow ever struck between the red and white. "These shades are hatred made manifest." She grinned. "Have fun." The swarm descended. Chaos erupted. Kaniko's senjutsu fists shattered a shade's jaw, only for its fragments to reform into two smaller dragons. Gasper's time freeze trapped a cluster mid-lunge, but the spell cracked under their collective malice. Issei lunged, Eclipse claws ripping through a shade, but its death scream mirrored Albion's voice. He faltered. "Don't hesitate." Ddraig roared. They're not real, Issei muttered. More to himself than the dragon. They're real enough to kill. Vala's divide blast vaporized a shade aiming for Issei's back. Weakling, Ria's power of destruction obliterated a dozen shades in a single blast. Issei, Valley. The core there. At the battlefield's heart loomed a twisted spire of blackened dragon bones. Pulsing within it was a shadowy orb, Erebus's anchor. Teamwork time, Biko quipped, smashing through shades. Hayadu, take point. Valley, play nice. Never, Vala spat, but he fell into step beside Issei. They carved a path, the peerages covering their flanks. Every step amplified the Eclipse Gear's instability. The core is a trap, Ddraig warned. Obviously, Vala's divide gear hissed, a new, mechanical voice replacing Albion. Issei blinked. Wait, your gear can talk now? Upgrade, Vala said tersely. Focus, the spire loomed. The orb throbbed, whispering in 1,000 overlapping voices. Ddraig's roar, Albion's snarl, Issei's own fears. Valley raised Zerul. Ready? Issei's armor flared. No, they struck as one. Zerul's blade met Eclipse claws, their combined energies piercing the orb, and the world went silent. Erebus stood before them. Not a god, not a monster, but a void. A silhouette shaped like a man, its edges fraying into smoke. Where its face should be writhed the masks from Issei's visions. Little dragons, it crooned, voice like grinding glass. You break my toys. Issei's armor cracked. Vala's blade trembled. Why fight? Your kind thrives on conflict. Let me cultivate it. Erebus's hand extended, and the battlefield shifted. Kuo Academy materialized around them, or a warped replica. Students and peerage members alike turned to ash, screaming as shades consumed them. Rias's corpse lay at Issei's feet. Illusions, Vala snarled, but his breath hitched. Is it? Erebus whispered. Or a glimpse. Issei's eclipse armor surged. We don't need futures. We make our own. The vision shattered. Erebus hissed, recoiling as Issei's claw ripped through its smoky form. Vala's blade followed, severing a tendril of shadow. You cannot kill nothing, child. But we can banish nothing, Lysandra called. She stood atop the spire, her hands carving a sigil into reality. Now, the peerages united. Ria's destruction, Akino's lightning, Biko's holy energy, and Kuroka's senjutsu fused into a beam aimed at Lysandra's sigil. Erebus screamed. The battleground collapsed. Author notes, Erebus's nature. As an entity feeding on conflict, he's less a villain and more a force of nature. His taunts aren't just mind games, they're weapons designed to corrode resolve. Teamwork dynamics, forcing Vala's team, Lone Wolves, and Issei's peerage, Found Family, to collaborate creates friction but also unexpected respect. Biko's snark and Kuroka's aloofness balance the tension. Vala's new gear. Without Albion, his divide gear has become a cold, logical weapon, symbolizing his loss of humanity compared to Issei's struggle to retain his. Lysandra's role. Her sigil suggests she's fought Erebus before. Her knowledge and cryptic motives keep her allies guessing. Is she a repentant accomplice or a rival schemer? The battle seemingly banishes Erebus, but the victory is hollow. Kuo begins transforming into a new battleground, warped by residual chaos. Worse, a shadowy mimic of Albion infiltrates the school, impersonating Issei to turn the peerage against him. Meanwhile, Lysandra disappears with a vial of Issei's hybrid blood. Recap. After banishing Erebus's shadow, the United Peerage returned to a Kuo Academy warped by residual chaos. Walls bleed, hallways loop endlessly, and a mimic of Albion haunts the halls, impersonating Issei to sow distrust. Lysandra vanished with Issei's hybrid blood, leaving the group fractured and paranoid. Chapter 8. The Divided Peerage. The dining hall felt like a courtroom. Kiba's sword lay on the table, a silent threat. Vala slaughtered entire clans for sport. Forgive me if I don't trust his redemption arc. Zenobia slammed her fist, Extarandal vibrating at her hip. We need his strength. Or did you forget the literal god of strife wants us dead? He's not wrong, Kuroka drawled from the windowsill, tail flicking. Valachan's like a poisoned dagger, useful, but don't grip the blade. No one asked you, Kaneko muttered. She hadn't touched her pancakes. Hadn't looked at Issei all morning. Rias massaged her temples. Enough. We vote. All in favor of no. Issei stood, his chair screeching. The eclipse gear's scar, a jagged red and silver line from neck to wrist, throbbed. This isn't a game. Vala's whatever. But I'm the one you're scared of. Silence. Asia reached for him. Issei, we're not. Liar. The word tore out of him, raw and trembling. The chandelier rattled as his power spiked. Kaneko won't sit near me. Kiba's been patrolling my room every night. Even Gasper. That's not true. Gasper squeaked, but his trembling hands betrayed him. Rias rose, her voice steady. Issei, sit. Please. He didn't. Couldn't. Weak. Ddraig sneered. But the insult lacked heat. The mimic struck during training. One moment, Issei was sparring with Zenobia. The next, a shadowy Albion shape wearing his face lunged from the gym mirrors, divide claws aimed at Kaneko. Issei moved on instinct. Eclipse armor encased him mid-leap. He tackled the mimic, their collision cratering the floor. Stay back, he shouted. But when the dust cleared, the mimic was gone. Only Issei remained, claws buried in shattered tile. Kaneko stared at him, pupils slit with fear. You look just like it. Rias intervened before he could reply. Training's over. Everyone, cool off. But cooling off meant whispers. Meant Kiba and Zenovia's argument reigniting in the armory. Don't care if he's your friend, Kiba hissed, polishing his sword with violent strokes. The moment that gear corrupts him, he'd die before hurting us, Zenovia snapped. You sure? Because Albion did. The name hung like a guillotine. Zenovia paled. That's low. Even for you. Kiba's smile was bitter. I've seen what happens when sacred gears go rogue. Or did you forget Kokobile? The door slammed shut behind them. Issei found Rias on the roof. Nightfall did nothing to hide Kuoa's decay. The trees writhed, classrooms pulsed like organs. He sat beside her, their shoulders barely touching. I don't even know who I am anymore, he whispered. Rias didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice cracked. When Surzex became a Mao, I barely recognized him. His power changed him. I thought I'd lost my brother. She turned, tears glinting. But he's still there. And so are you. Issei's laugh was hollow. What if me isn't enough? She kissed him. Not passionately, but desperately. A lifeline. Then we'll be not enough together. Author notes. Kiba versus Zenovia. Their clash isn't just about Valley. Kiba's trauma from Holy Sword experiments and Zenovia's guilt over Excalibur's legacy fuel their fears. Kiba sees Issei's corruption as inevitable. Zenovia denies it to atone for her own past. Kaneko's distance. Her fear isn't just of Issei, it's of herself. Senjutsu requires emotional balance, and his chaotic aura destabilizes her. She's avoiding him to avoid losing control. Issei's breakdown. This moment strips away his hero persona. His vulnerability here isn't weakness. It's the first step to mastering Eclipse Gear by accepting, not fighting, his duality. The Mimic. Shadow Albion's impersonations aren't random. It targets moments of doubt, exploiting fractures in trust. Next chapter, it'll impersonate someone else to devastating effect. The Mimic kidnaps Asia, framing Issei. The peerage splinters. Half believe he's possessed, half rally to defend him. Valley, of all people, becomes Issei's alibi. He's too sloppy to pull this off. Meanwhile, Lysandra resurfaces, with Michael's Archangels. Recap. After the Mimic framed Issei for Asia's kidnapping, the peerage fractured, half believed him corrupted, half defended him. Vala's unexpected alibi, he's too sloppy, spared Issei expulsion, but distrust lingers. Lysandra resurfaced, brokering a shaky alliance with Michael's Archangels, who demand Issei's purification post-Erebus. Chapter 9. The Dragon Queen's Gambit. The plan was suicide, and everyone knew it. Rias traced a sigil over the warped chapel floor, a fusion of demonic script and holy glyphs. Erebus feeds on conflict, so we'll feed him. She nodded to Issei. Your Eclipse Gear is the perfect bait, and when he takes the bite? Vala leaned against a cracked pew, Zirwal's blade glinting. What then? Then we cage him, Aquino said, her voice steel. She and Graphia hovered over a molten silver cauldron, blending sacred ash and devil's blood. A seal woven from opposites, holy and demonic. red and white. Issei's gauntlet flickered. "This is madness," Ddraig growled. "You'll get us all killed." "But what a death," Albion murmured, faint as static. Kaneko avoided Issei's gaze, scrubbing Senjutsu charms into the walls. Zenobia and Kiba stood guard at opposite doors, tense, but united for now. "The seal requires balance," Graphia warned, ladling the molten mixture into a vial. "You must channel both boost and divide perfectly during the ritual. Any tilt, and kaboom." Biko quipped. "Worse," Rias said. "Erebus becomes unstoppable." Asia gripped Issei's hand. "We'll help you balance." He forced a smile. "Yeah, teamwork, right?" The trap sprung at midnight. Issei stood alone in the chapel's center, Eclipse armor active. The gear's chaotic aura pulsed like a beacon. "Come on, you shadowy bastard. Take the bait." A cold laugh echoed. "Little dragon, you reek of desperation." Erebus materialized as a swarm of screaming faces, each a warped reflection of Issei's fears. Rias' corpse, Kuo in ruins, Vala's blade through his heart. "You forgot one," Issei spat, channeling boost. The armor flared crimson. Rias' signal. Now, Aquino and Graphia slammed their palms onto the sigil. Holy demonic chains erupted, binding Erebus. "You think this holds me?" The entity thrashed, snapping half the chains. "Issei," Rias shouted. "Balance it." He closed his eyes. Divide. Silver light clashed with red. The chains reforged, stronger. Erebus shrieked. "You cannot sustain this. The dragons hate. They burn." "He's right," Albion whispered. "The seal requires sacrifice." Issei's blood ran cold. "No, not again." "It's the only way," Albion said. "Erebus's hold on us is my fault. My hatred, my regret, gave him roots." Draig's voice cracked. "Albion, tell Valley he was worthy." The white dragon's presence surged, a final, blinding light, before severing. Issei screamed. The eclipse gear's silver half dimmed, leaving jagged crimson plates. The chains tightened, pure holy energy now. "No." Erebus writhed, his form dissolving. "This changes nothing. Conflict is eternal, but we aren't." Rias unleashed her full power, the seal's final layer activating. The chapel exploded in light. When Issei woke, the others were cheering. Graphia slumped against a wall, exhausted. Aquino hugged a trembling Rias. Vala stared at Zeruel, its edge dull. Albion's soul fragment gone. Only Issei heard the silence. "He's really gone," Ddraig said, voice hollow. Issei's gauntlet, now crimson with faint silver scars, felt heavier than ever. Author notes: Albion's final sacrifice. By erasing his consciousness, Albion didn't just weaken Erebus. He chose redemption over legacy. This contrasts Draig's survival, forcing the Red Dragon to confront his own capacity for change. The seal's irony. The Holy Demonic Alliance, Aquino/Graphia, mirrors Issei's internal balance. But with Albion gone, the Eclipse gear is now lopsided, a vulnerability Erebus might exploit later. Vala's quiet grief. Zeruel losing its glow symbolizes Vala's unresolved guilt. His rivalry with Albion defined him. Without it, who is he? Rias' growth. Her gambit succeeded, but at a cost. Leading means making brutal choices. This win might haunt her. Recap. After Albion's final sacrifice sealed Erebus temporarily, Issei's Eclipse gear became unstable, its silver half dimmed. Kuoa's survivors now face a new threat. Zealots mutated by holy demonic fallout who brand Issei, God's abomination. Valley, adrift without Albion's rivalry, secretly hunts Erebus remnants and becomes his vessel. Chapter 10. The Eclipse Sovereign's Rise. The possession began with a whisper. Vala stood in the ruins of Albion's grave, Zeruel's dull blade in hand. "Come on, you coward. Fight me as you wish." Erebus's voice slithered from the blade. Shadows erupted, not from the air, but from Vala's own scars. He choked as tendrils of primordial spite flooded his veins, his divide gear shrieking. "Pathetic host," Erebus crooned through Vala's mouth. "But sufficient." When Vala's team found him, he was no longer Valley. Issei felt the shift. The Eclipse gear, now a lopsided crimson, vibrated violently as he sat with Rias in the chapel. "Something's wrong," Ddraig hissed. "The white's absence, it's left a void." Kaneko burst in, fur singed. Val is here. He's different. Different was an understatement. Divine Eclipse hovered above Kuo, a grotesque fusion of Vala's body and Erebus's void. Silver scales crusted with blackened holy runes covered his skin. One eye glowed Lucifer red. The other was a hollow pit spewing shadows. Behold! Erebus spread Vala's arms. Zerul now a jagged spire of corruption. The true potential of dragon hatred. The first strike leveled Kuo's gates. Issei's eclipse scale mail crumbled on impact. You are less without the white, Erebus taunted, pinning Issei with Vala's divide-clawed foot. A relic. Let me end you. Valley. Fight him. Issei choked. A flicker. Vala's eye twitched. He can't. Ria's power of destruction glanced off Erebus's armor. Akino's holy lightning fueled him. Issei, Ddraig growled. The gear. It needs balance. Albion's gone. Issei rolled as Zerul impaled where his head had been. No. He's you now. The truth struck. Albion hadn't just sacrificed his consciousness. He'd merged with Issei's soul. The eclipse gear wasn't broken. It was dormant. Balance. Issei closed his eyes. Memories flooded. Albion's first flight. Skies untainted by war. Ddraig's laughter as he sparred with a young human. A handshake, not a clash. Enough. Erebus's roar shook the earth. Issei opened his eyes. The eclipse gear shifted. Crimson and silver didn't clash. They danced. Sleek obsidian plates encased him, glowing veins of red and silver thrumming in harmony. Duality drive. Erebus recoiled. What is this? A ceasefire, Issei said. The battle defied reason. Duality drive moved faster than light, yet left the air unbroken. Each strike blended divide and boost, not as opposing forces, but facets of a greater whole. You cannot win, Erebus screamed, but Vala's body faltered. Valley. Issei seized Divine Eclipse's blade, the duality drive neutralizing its corruption. I'm not letting you go. A shudder. Vala's voice clawed free. Hayudu kill me. TCH. Never took you for a quitter. Issei's fist slammed into Vala's chest, not with force, but a pulse of duality energy. The void within Valley ruptured. Erebus howled as the duality drive's light purged his essence. This changes nothing. I am eternal, but we're not. Issei wrenched Zerul free. And we'll fight you every time. The blade shattered. Erebus's hold snapped. Vala collapsed, himself again. Scars smoking, but alive. Author notes. Divine Eclipse's design. Vala's possessed form merges his divide gear with Erebus's void, symbolizing how unchecked hatred corrupts legacy. The blackened holy runes hint at heaven's hidden role in the chaos. Duality drives evolution. The sleek, unified armor represents Issei's acceptance of both dragons' legacies, not as rivals, but partners. The glowing veins mirror his human soul anchoring their power. Erebus's true nature. His defeat isn't an end. As a primordial force, he'll resurge. But now, Issei and Valley have a blueprint to fight him. You think you deserve their power? Vala snarled, his voice raw with fury. His divine dividing armor pulsed, unstable and cracking at the seams. Albion's absence had left it feral. You stole him from me. Issei barely raised his hybrid gauntlet in time. Vala's fist, charged with a divide field, slammed into his guard. The impact shattered the ground beneath them, sending shockwaves through the ruins of the underworld's market square. I didn't steal anything. Issei spat back. His gauntlet flickered, unstable, one moment radiating Ddraig's fiery power, the next exuding Albion's frost. I never wanted this. Vala's eye twitched, but his fury didn't waver. Albion was mine to surpass. My rival. My proof that He hesitated, only for a fraction of a second, but Issei saw it. The fracture in Vala's conviction. The way his fists clenched tighter, not just in rage, but grief. And that's when he knew. You don't hate me, Issei exhaled. You hate that he's gone. Vala's fists trembled. Shut up. He chose this, Issei continued, stepping forward. Not me. Not you. He knew something we didn't. Something about this power, about Erebus. And instead of honoring that, you're throwing a tantrum like a child. Vala's entire body shook. I should kill you, then do it. Issei spread his arms. Or help me end Erebus. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken emotions. Then, with a furious growl, Valley turned away. TCH fine. But when this is over, Hayadu, we settle this properly. Issei grinned weakly. Wouldn't have it any other way. Recap. After purging Erebus from Valley and unlocking the duality drive, Issei struggles to control the merged power of Ddraig and Albion's residual energy. Lysandra, now allied with Ophis Shadow and a resurrected Albion mimic, taunts the peerage with cryptic warnings. Dragons were never meant to coexist. Chapter 11. The final lesson. The training room reeked of burnt ozone and failure. Issei collapsed against the wall, his duality drive armor flickering into nothingness. Again, he growled, sweat dripping into his eyes. Fool, Ddraig muttered, though his tone lacked bite. You force harmony. It must be felt. Easy for you to say. Issei snapped. Albion's gone. All I've got left is static. A pause. Then, not all. The vision struck without warning. Issei stood in a primordial forest, sunlight filtering through leaves larger than castles. Two dragons, crimson and silver, lay wounded in a clearing, their scales dulled by venomous gashes. Why save me? Albion rasped, his wing twisted at a brutal angle. We are rivals. Ddraig, missing 3 claws and half a horn, snorted a plume of smoke. Rivals, not fools. That Hydra would have killed us both. He nudged a charred Hydra skull with his tail. Besides, who else would I argue with? Albion laughed, a sound like glacial ice cracking. You'd perish of boredom. They healed slowly, side by side. Over centuries, the forest grew around their scars. Issei gasped, back in the training room. That was you and Albion? A lifetime ago, Ddraig said quietly. Before the lies. Before the war. Teach me. Issei stood, resolve hardening. The move you used against the Hydra, the Unity Strike. Draig's silence stretched. Then, it requires trust. Not in power, but in the dragon beside you. The lesson was agony. Issei channeled boost, then divide. But the energies clashed like fire and ice. His bones shuddered, his vision blurred. You're forcing them to coexist, Ddraig barked. Let them flow. Another failure. Another vision. Ddraig and Albion soared above a human village, their wings synced to shield it from a meteor storm. Since when do you care for ants? Albion sneered, even as he vaporized a flaming rock. Since they named a beer after me, Ddraig shot back. Try the mead. It's divine. Focus. Ria's voice snapped Issei back. She stood at the room's edge, worry etched into her face. You're bleeding. He wiped gold cobalt blood from his nose. I've got this, liar. The 9th attempt nearly killed him. Boost and divide spiraled out of control, tearing a hole in reality. Graphia barely contained it with ice seals. Enough, Rias pleaded. Stop before you. No. Issei activated duality drive, the obsidian armor sealing his wounds. One more. Ddraig sighed. Stubborn fool. Like him, the 10th attempt began with a memory. Albion, shielding Ddraig from a backstab by the masked manipulator. Go. I'll hold them. Ddraig's roar shook the heavens. We leave together. Issei moved. Boost and divide merged, not as opposing forces, but as a single motion. Crimson and silver light entwined, striking the dummy with a sound like a symphony. The target didn't shatter. It disintegrated. Atoms harmonized into light. Unity strike, Ddraig whispered, awed. You did it. Ria's tears were answer enough. Author notes. The flashback's purpose. Showing Ddraig and Albion's camaraderie before their feud reframes their entire rivalry as tragedy, not inevitability. It also mirrors Issei/Vala's arc. History repeating until someone breaks the cycle. Unity strike symbolism. The technique isn't just a weapon. It's a eulogy for the dragon's lost friendship. Issei mastering it honors Albion's sacrifice and Ddraig's growth. Lysandra's role. Her absence this chapter is deliberate. She's scheming with Ophis Shadow, setting up the finale where balance is challenged by primordial chaos. Issei's growth. His determination to preserve Albion's memory, despite the pain, cements him as the dragon's true heir, not just in power, but in spirit. Recap. After mastering the Unity Strike by embracing Ddraig and Albion's forgotten camaraderie, Issei prepares for the final clash against Erebus. Lysandra, wielding a corrupted Albion mimic and Ophis Shadow, besieges Kuo with Michael Zealots. The peerage, fractured but defiant, rallies to protect Issei as he faces the cost of wielding the dragon's merged legacy. Erebus's tendrils, blacker than the void, wrapped around Issei's body, sinking into his very soul. The laughter of the primordial being echoed through Kuoa's shattered sky. "You are nothing without them," Erebus whispered. "Without the dragons, what are you? Just a boy playing at war." The darkness pressed in, choking him. But then, "Remember us." It wasn't just Ddraig's voice. It wasn't just Albion's. It was something deeper. The memory of what they had been before they were rivals, before manipulation turned them into enemies. Issei's eyes snapped open. The eclipse gear flared. But this time, it was different. Not a war between red and silver, but a perfect synthesis. Duality drive. Erebus recoiled as the energy radiated outward, dispelling his void. "No, that balance is impossible. Only if you keep us apart." Issei clenched his fists. But we were never meant to fight alone. With a final push, the duality strike cut through Erebus' form, not destroying him, but severing his grasp on the fabric of reality. The entity's screams faded into the abyss, his influence collapsing like a dying star. And then, silence. Issei fell to his knees, his armor flickering out. The weight of everything, of victory, of loss, of what it had cost, finally hit him. Ddraig's voice was a whisper now, almost distant. "You did well, partner." I can't hear Albion anymore," Issei murmured. "Because he's part of you now." The finality in his tone hit harder than any battle. The sky wept ash. Erebus's true form, a writhing mass of void and screaming dragon skulls, loomed over Kuo. Lysandra stood at its core, her once mismatched eyes now voids. "You cannot unite what was born to clash," she hissed through the mimic Albion's jaws. Issei's duality drive armor flickered, its crimson-silver veins dimming. "Watch me." The battle began with silence. Issei's first unity strike tore through Erebus's left wing, the harmonious energy reducing it to stardust. Lysandra retaliated, Ophis' shadow twisting reality into a labyrinth of fractured time. Rias, aged and alone, kneeling at Issei's grave. Valley, consumed by divide, slaughtering the peerage. A world where the dragon's feud never ended. Illusions. Ddraig roared. "No," Issei whispered. "Warnings." He charged. Erebus's tendrils pierced Issei's armor, injecting venomous whispers. "You fear irrelevance. Without your gears, you are nothing." Issei faltered. The duality drive cracked. "Issei." Ddraig's voice cut through the poison. "Remember the Hydra. Remember us." The memory surged. Ddraig and Albion, wounded but unbroken, standing back to back. Unity. Issei's armor blazed. "This isn't just their power. It's mine." The unity strike struck true. Erebus screamed as the harmony of boost and divide unraveled his core. Lysandra's mimic Albion shattered, her final snarl lost to the void. "You cannot destroy eternity." "But I can defy it," Issei said. The unity strike detonated. The aftermath was silence. Issei collapsed, the duality drive dissolving. His sacred gear, once a helix of crimson and silver, crumbled to ash. "No!" Rhea stumbled toward him, her voice distant. Ddraig's spirit materialized, translucent and fading. "It's done." Issei choked on blood and tears. "Don't go. Not you too." The Welsh dragon's spectral claw brushed his forehead, a final, fond gesture. "You were our best host and our best friend." His form scattered like embers. Epilogue. Weeks later, Issei stood at Albion's grave, ordinary and alive. Rhea's jacket hung loose on his shoulders, a ward against the autumn chill. Valley approached, Zirwul's hilt strapped to his back. "What now?" Issei smiled, faint but sure. "We live." Above them, a single crimson-silver star flickered, a dragon's farewell. Author notes. Sacred Gear's destruction. Issei losing his gear isn't just a sacrifice, it's liberation. The dragon's legacies live through him now, not a weapon. His heroism stems from humanity, not power. Ddraig's farewell. His final line contrasts his initial disdain in DXD's early arcs. Letting go of Welsh Dragon, pride to call Issei friend, completes his arc from deity to mentor. Lysandra's fate. Her demise with Erebus is ambiguous. As a chaos agent, she might return. But that's a tale for another time. The star symbolism. The crimson-silver star mirrors the unity strike's harmony. It's a beacon for future stories, maybe Issei's, maybe in others. Recap. After destroying Erebus and sacrificing his sacred gear, Issei lost both Ddraig and Albion, leaving him powerless. Valley, freed from Erebus's corruption, discovered his divine dividing had vanished entirely. The peerage saved Kuo, but at a cost no one anticipated. A world without dragons. Chapter 13. A world without dragons. The bar was quiet. Not the good kind of quiet, the heavy, suffocating kind. Vala slid into the booth across from Issei, 2 glasses of whiskey in hand. No taunts, no smirks, just a bottle and the weight of absence. "They're gone," Issei said, staring at his unmarked hands. Vala poured. "Yeah." They drank in silence. Issei's days blurred. He woke to sunlight instead of Draig's grumbling, trained with weights instead of boosted gear. Akino's lightning still crackled in the distance. Kiba's sword still sang. But their battles no longer needed him. Kaneko left protein bars by his door. Asia prayed louder, as if volume could fill the void. Rias watched him. Always. The drink hit Vala first. "Remember when I swore I'd kill you?" Issei snorted. "You failed. A lot. TCH, you just got lucky." Vala swirled his whiskey, the ice clinking. "Now look at us. 2 has-beens." "Speak for yourself," Issei muttered. "I'm figuring it out." "Liar." Vala's smirk was thin, brittle. "You miss it. The rush. The purpose." Issei's throat tightened. "Don't you?" Vala drained his glass. "Every damn day." Rias found him on the roof that night. "You're avoiding me," she said, her voice soft but firm. Issei stared at the stars, no crimson silver among them. "You've got better things to do." "Better than you?" She stepped closer. "Issei, I don't." He backed away. "I'm not. This isn't what you signed up for." "What if it is?" Her eyes glistened. "I didn't fall for boosted gear. I fell for you." The words hung between them, fragile as glass. Issei shattered them. "You deserve a king. Not this." He left her there, tears cooling in the autumn air. Author notes. Power and identity. Both Issei and Valley define themselves by their sacred gears. Stripped of that, they're forced to confront who they are without war. A theme central to their growth, or regression. Rias' love. Her confession isn't about romance, but loyalty. She's choosing Issei over duty, but his self-loathing can't accept it yet, a painful mirror of his early insecurities. The quiet moments. The bar scene's lack of banter underscores their loss. No dragons, no rivalry, just 2 boys grieving what made them special. Foreshadowing. The crimson silver scale, from Chapter 12's ending, isn't just a metaphor. It's a seed. Keep an eye on Surzek's wager. Recap. After losing their sacred gears, Issei and Vala grapple with identity and purpose, their bond forged through shared loss. Ria's confession of love goes unreciprocated as Issei's self-doubt festers. Unknown to them, Surzek's and Michael monitor a mysterious crimson-silver scale, a relic of the dragon's fused power, hinting at dormant legacies. Chapter 14. The spark ignites. Issei scrubbed espresso stains from the cafe counter, the monotony a poor substitute for battle. Vala's words echoed, 2 has-beens. He flexed his hand, still unmarked by scales. Then the scale burned. The shard Surzek had kept secret glowed in his pocket, searing through fabric. He dropped the rag, hissing, "Did you think we'd abandon you?" Draig's voice. Issei stumbled into the alley, the scale blazing like a star. Lysandra leaned against the wall, her patchwork robes pristine. "Surprise. You're dead," Issei spat. "Correction. Erebus is dead. I'm repurposed." She flicked the scale. It floated, splitting into 2 sigils, crimson and silver. The gears weren't destroyed. They evolved. Vala materialized, drawn by the energy. "Explain." "Now," Lysandra grinned. "The Unity Strike didn't kill the dragons. It unshackled them. Their souls fused with yours." She tapped Issei's chest. "You're not a host anymore. You're a conduit." The sigils plunged into their hearts. Issei's scream lit the alley white. Power surged. Not the jagged chaos of Eclipse, but something cleaner. A pure white aura enveloped him, ethereal and humming with latent voices. "Show off," Albion muttered. "Took you long enough," Ddraig grumbled. Twin specters materialized, Draig's crimson form flickering with silver cracks, Albion's silver body laced with red. "Your ghosts?" Issei breathed. Temporary ones, Albion said. Your ascendant dragon soul pulls us from the astral plane. Briefly, Valis stared at his hands. And me? Lysandra smirked. Check your reflection. His eyes glowed. Not Lucifer red, but starlight silver. I don't feel anything. Because you're resisting, Lysandra said. But that's a you problem, sirens wailed. Michael's zealots descended, wings blotting out the sun. The battle was a symphony of light. Issei's ascendant aura lashed like a whip, Ddraig and Albion fighting alongside him as spectral allies. Left, Ddraig roared, incinerating a seraph. Divide the flank, Albion ordered, freezing zealots mid-air. Valley watched, conflicted, until a blade grazed his arm. His silver aura detonated, divine dividing's echo shredding the attacker's wings. Huh, he muttered. Not bad. Rias arrived mid-battle, her power of destruction mingling with Issei's light. You idiot, she whispered, eyes bright. You're still you. The zealots retreated, outmatched. Author notes, Ascendant Dragon Soul. The white aura symbolizes rebirth, Ddraig and Albion's souls purified of Erebus's corruption. Their temporary return lets Issei lead without being defined by them. Valis' silence. His subdued reaction hints at insecurity. Without Albion's rivalry, who is he? His starlight silver power is a blank slate, forged by choice, not legacy. Lysandra's role. Her repurposing ties to the scale's sentience. She's now a guide, or puppet, for the dragon's reborn will, not Erebus. Rias' relief. Her joy isn't about Issei's power. It's seeing him reclaim his self-worth. The man, not the weapon. Recap. Years after founding the Dragon's Oath Alliance and marrying Rias, Issei's life brims with chaotic peace, training sacred gear successors, parenting twins, and dodging Valis' snark. Lysandra's cryptic, Phase 3, warning looms unanswered. The dragon's specters, though silent since the guild's inception, linger as whispers in Issei's soul. Epilogue. The dragon's promise. The dream began in the primordial forest. Issei stood beneath leaves larger than cities, sunlight dappling a meadow where two dragons, crimson and silver, lay entwined like old friends. Took you long enough? Ddraig grumbled, though his voice held no bite. He's busy, Albion said, gaze soft. As it should be. Issei's breath caught. You're leaving? Not leaving, Ddraig corrected. Resting. Properly this time. Albion's spectral form shimmered as twin toddlers materialized in the grass. A boy with Rias auburn hair and silver eyes. A girl with Issei's grin and crimson irises. They'll inherit our power, Albion said, but not our war. The boy giggled, tiny claws, human, yet scaled, sparking with divide energy. The girl babbled, fists glowing boosted red. Guide them, Ddraig said. We'll whisper when needed. Issei knelt, tears blurring the vision. Thank you for everything. The dragons nuzzled his shoulders, a final, wordless embrace, before dissolving into starlight. Post-credits teaser. Lysandra stood in a forgotten temple, murals of dragons, and a hooded human ally peeling from the walls. She traced her ancestor's name, Arian, the mortal who once saved Ddraig and Albion from the Hydra. Cycle ends tonight, she whispered, pressing a dagger to her palm. Blood dripped onto an altar, reactivating ancient runes. Ophis' shadow coalesced, its voice dual-toned, void and hope. Will you free them? No, Lysandra said. I'll free us. The temple shook. Beneath the altar, a sealed egg pulsed with primordial light. Author notes, legacy over blood. The twins inheriting the gears without inheriting the dragon's curse breaks the cycle. Their childhood innocence contrasts Issei/Valis' trauma, symbolizing hope. Lysandra's truth, revealing her as Arian's descendant, recontextualizes her actions. She wasn't a villain, but a martyr destroying a system that enslaved even her kin. Her phases were steps to resurrect the original dragon egg, untainted by strife. Ddraig and Albion's farewell. Their peaceful exit in a shared dream gives closure, but the whisper promise keeps them present as mentors, not overlords. Ophis duality. The shadow's dual voice hints at Ophis' split nature, infinite and void. The egg might birth a new Ophis, or something entirely new. Final line. Somewhere, Vala's silver-eyed daughter asks, Uncle Valley, did you really try to kill Daddy? Vala smirks. Every Tuesday, the end.